The old god of death and darkness, the two-headed serpent, the twisting tyrant, or the vengeful one. Whatever the title, they're all fitting to describe the ancient serpentine deity known as Gileac. Gileac is one of the 6 known gods within the world of Vermis. His legacy is that of the cursed, and his influence and effect on the world seems greater in death than perhaps it was in life. Gileac is a very large boa constrictor-like snake god who seemed to function as any other god, with followers, loyalists, cults, offerings and sacrifices made to them and their domain. So devoted, in fact, were his followers that any current depictions of the serpent god bear the head of one such devotee that offered hers to replace his after his decapitation. But I'm getting ahead of myself. As with any gods... Oh no, I can't believe it. I put that in the script. As with any gods, their origins are mysterious or utterly unknown, but where others remain true to their discipline, their doctrine. Mergo, the relentless, of growth, plants, and tenacity. Dorvis, of truth, funnily enough a god never mentioned or seen again in any regard thereafter. Gervak, of great deeds and greatness. And Kedareth, all act by their own design, alone as far as gods are concerned. But the god of darkness and death's vengeance begins with another god, Marko, the prophet. Marko was a god of visions, clairvoyance and farsight, and his followers were told these visions, these prolific sights, and for that he was praised. One such vision was perhaps the catalyst, and one, I'd speculate, was both the warning and the cause of all the horrors to follow. Marko placed a curse upon Gileac, quote, "A punishment yet unworthy of thy sin." And thus, the eternal curse was upon Gileac. From the description and current effects upon the player within the book, they no longer cast a shadow and, quote, "The bearer of the curse will suffer a fate worse than death for as long as the blasphemer wishes. They will never be allowed to die." Does eternal life sound like a punishment? It does in an existential sense, or from being driven mad. But also, how does this undying work, this eternal life? Do you rot, but still remain conscious and living? It isn't expressly said, but my own interpretation is a curse that prevents death and removes shadows, placed upon a god of death and darkness, is almost like attempting to negate or cancel out a god's whole existence and reason for being. To essentially remove their purpose, a god of death and darkness who can't block light or understand death to know it? Maybe not in such literal terms, but you see what I mean. This would also make sense as to why the description mentions that the curse sufferer will remain unable to die as long as the blasphemer wishes. The blasphemer here is Marko, and to blaspheme is to speak ill, offensively, or with disdain about gods or sacred things. I found it curious, though, what Marko says. A punishment yet unworthy of thy sin. Yet unworthy as in, it's a punishment but not good enough for the sin? Or is it a punishment that will eventually be worthy of the sin? The sin being something Gileac has done or will do. For this curse, Marko is decapitated by the followers of Gileac, and his mummified head now rests atop an altar, still able to utter future visions to those faithful who can listen. though all his visions now speak only of decay and ruin. Retaliation for retaliation, and Gileac is then decapitated. A sea of anguish and eternal vengeance now washes through the followers of the serpent. Adorned with the visage of a young girl's head, the Gileac followers begin a massacre across the world, a depraved crusade, lopping heads of any and all who would stand against them or their god. It is said they do this to seek a cure to the god's curse, that they do this to seek answers. As far as a curse is concerned, I fear, from my own understanding, there is no cure. The ironic twist of it all, I feel, rests in the death of Marko for the cursing of Gileac. The description of the eternal curse said, as long as the blasphemer wishes, the cursed shall remain cursed. Marko can no longer stop wishing for the curse to continue, as he is dead. And because Gileac cannot die, but is death, and is dead, all that can come from this state is then rot and decay, and a darkness that is left unchecked. Marko had almost ended themselves and the world for punishing Gileac for the crimes that his people would commit in revenge for the punishment Marko enforced upon him. A god of prophecy and vision sees a sin yet committed, and as a result curses the sinner before the crime as punishment. The cursed one's followers kill the punisher and then are attacked back. A cycle of violence. The story of Gileac, the significance of Gileac, is, I think, less about they, the god being, and more about those who follow him. The followers of Gileac act upon the demands of vengeance on behalf of their god now being a motionless snake body with a rotting woman's head attached. These same followers span across Vermis 1 and 2, with the wandering angels in the graves and mountains, and the bone hunters in the deserts of Agrot. The spread and variation of Gileac devotees was something I wasn't expecting when reading the two books, especially the association of angels with them. The wandering angels wear a massive armor. They are clad knights with what appears to be razor-sharp iron halos attached to their necks. The knights are on some type of sacrificial pilgrimage, a journey towards the peak of a sacred mountain before pulling the halos down, severing their heads, which roll into the cliff below. Gileac servants gather their fallen equipment and take it back to the temple. The temple referenced here isn't expressly defined in the book, but from the second one, we can assume it's the Temple of Gileac, this Aztec stylized place, most likely housing the body of their god. The angels carry Gileac statues and snake fangs, the same crooked fang items the bone hunters carry, which they use to inject themselves with a poison that makes them go berserk and enhance their abilities. The significance of what the wandering angels do, as opposed to their brethren, the bone hunters, is that the angels serve Gileac in penance, self-sacrifice. This is something that is reminiscent of the young woman who gave up her own head, or the actions of someone atoning for their sins against someone or something they've wronged. Perhaps these are followers of Marko who converted, or just fanatic warriors of Gileac who donate their heads in their god's memory. It's hard to say, but the connection of angel and snake, the biblical connotations, is fun here, and a classic. Also, their alignment is 85% evil, thereabouts, and this alignment business stuff is something I want to touch back on in a moment, but for now, we must speak on the bone hunters. I've already spoken a little bit on them in my Vermis 2 overview video, but the bone hunters serve Gileac and serve the common goal of finding a cure and granting their gods dark desires. However, it says that they do this in many different ways. Bone hunters are solitary, bandits, robbers, pillagers, treasure hunters, and our protagonist in Vermis 2, the Wayfarer, is one such bone hunter, a believer of Gileac. So the importance of the coiled one within the world is very clear. Our Wayfarer ends their journey breaking an illusion as they themselves are decapitated and they walk away with a sword and helmet left to rust in the sand. Potentially they have lost faith or perhaps found themselves looking inwards and have no need for more than that. They looked inside and they saw no guards, no monsters, just warm darkness. And I think that is what Gileac represented for many before the curse. A death cult, sure, but it was an assured thing as well. Death, that all must face and accept. Kings or paupers, all would find the embrace of Umbra one day. But then why are Gileac followers evil? And why are followers of Marko, as seen here, good, if not the goodest of people in Vermis? I think the alignment is related to present-day actions of those people. Marko's prophets now spread word of ill tidings and warns of things, suffering at the hand of Gylac's servants, while Gylac's fanatic devotees wage a great depraved massacre against anyone who stands against them on behalf of their god, which, again, unlike the head of Marko, does not speak to them. All of Gylac's followers speak and act on their behalf, and they are solitary, cruel, and berserk. Or some, at least. Both the Marko prophet and wandering angel characters have maxed out faith stats, but the angel has more strength, where the prophet has more will and intelligence, if that says anything to the different beliefs of these gods. Ultimately, I think Gileac, across the world of Vermis, is the Ouroboros, the cycle, the snake eating itself, but instead it's people destroying one another on their behalf. Marko is the hubris of foresight, the hubris of perhaps a greater intelligence, that knowing doesn't matter if the actions you take go against that which you stand for, that good and bad are arbitrary values, the same as games like, I don't know, Fallout or Mass Effect might have. They are overt with no nuance, so they are easier to swallow in the face of what you see, experience, and know to be true. I think there is something to Gylac's domain, the representation of them being a god of darkness and death, that is natural, not good or evil. The fact that snakes shed their skin also fits with the idea of questioning your flesh. Who are you? What are you? Changing heads, taking on new identities, titles, the notion of fluidity, change. It's very Vermis. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all just skeletons clad in flesh. But if able to choose the flesh, which do you choose? Also, what's the deal with darkness snakes? Like Kingseeker Frampt, the Abyssal Serpent from Elden Ring. Snakes have always been symbols of evil or treachery, but also of the eternal, the immortal, and the cycle of life. Aztecs' Quetzalcoatl was both a man and a snake, which I feel is partly an inspiration for Gileac. The dangers of a mindless devotion, the forgetting of primordial understandings. Gileac isn't a god of vengeance. They were made one post-mortem by the grief and anger of their followers. They were always death and darkness, but death and darkness were not always evil. They simply were, and then were made to be. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Man, Vermis 1 is really getting in my head in a kind of a lot of interwoven themes that I wasn't expecting. I keep saying I wasn't expecting, but hey, I'm pretty surprised by this book. I'll try and keep these videos as locked in as possible around their topics and characters, but I'm also kind of liking this sort of the musing, cerebral nature of Vermis, the themes that it brings up. But yeah, what do you guys think? Ghylak, good, bad? Marko? Which of those two guys would you follow? Leave your thoughts and comment below. And I've been Haunted Picnic, and I'll see you all next time.